Hello, citizens. This is Curt, and I'm here with this week's status readout concerning the ongoing refactoring of the Ziti browser stack. If you watched my last video, you saw how the Ziti browser runtime connected the Chrome browser to a Ziti edge router. We did that in response to a kind of contrived dial directive that I dropped in, and it made a dial to a service known to exist on the network. And that service was a Mattermost Docker container that we were running on the network. Today, I'll build on that, but instead of making this manually inserted or contrived dial, I'll begin demonstrating the real power of the Ziti browser runtime, which will transparently intercept all calls from the web app to the browser's API primitives that do networking I/O. I'm referring to things like the Fetch API, the XML HTTP Request API, or XHR, and last but not least, the WebSocket API. If the web app wants to talk to the network, it will be using one of those three mechanisms or all of them, and we will transparently intercept them and then decide on the fly which traffic is targeting a Ziti service and which is not, which is targeting just the raw internet. If we see requests are targeting Ziti services, and we do that by looking at the target host in port, and we map that onto some configuration information that we know exists on the network, and anything that aligns, we will consider targeting Ziti services. We will automatically do a dial to those services on behalf of the fetch, the XHR, or the WebSocket. We'll facilitate wrapping a streaming socket abstraction around the connection that comes back from that Ziti dial. And then we'll facilitate all the necessary HTTP protocol and or WebSocket protocols that need to be done on top of that socket abstraction. And of course, we'll need full HTTP parsing capabilities online within the protocols that we're handling, and they will ultimately surface to the web app the same behaviors that it expects from a browser for the Fetch, XHR, and WebSocket primitives, but we'll be doing it in pure JavaScript in the Ziti browser runtime, leveraging all the mutual TLS PKI that we discussed and demoed in previous videos. So if we look at the Ziti browser runtime as a cake stack, we kind of stopped in the previous demo right about here. This video brings it even into a higher level of sophistication that I just spoke to by bringing in all these different layers of end-to-end encryption, HTTP parsing, the socket streaming, and of course the primitives of the API. So that's what you're going to be seeing here today. So if I bring up a brand new incognito window, and just like before, I surf to the HTTP agent, which is fronting the dark web app, the dark Mattermost web app, and we watch the traffic that comes back, the familiar dance that we discussed before, obtaining the ephemeral certs, and then using those to acquire a session and eventually a WebSocket to the edge router. All of that happened just like before. Difference is once the browser, the Ziti browser runtime was inside the browser, we started making calls across the WebSocket. So now that everything has been loaded across the Ziti channel, go ahead and get logged in. Created myself a silly user ID, and we're now up inside the app in all of its glory. I'm going to log into the same app outside of Ziti, so it's running all locally on my machine. And I wanted to show you something. We get into the network tab and track all network I/O. As I click from channel to channel in the Mattermost app, you can see the app is making calls to various API, doing various posts saying, like here's one API v4 channels, and what posts, all of those types of things. If we do the same thing over here, the only ones you're going to see showing up in the network tab are these things that are not part of Ziti. This PDAP Metalytics, analytics tracking app that Mattermost has baked into itself is going over the raw internet. So you'll see those down here. If we were to open up the WebSocket that we have to the edge router and do the same thing, you can see that all that traffic is now going over that. And in the previous demo, you saw the diagram I brought up. So we're no longer doing raw I/O to the internet. We're capturing it inside the browser. Ziti browser runtime takes care of everything that's necessary to bring it back and forth over the Ziti network to the dark web app and back to the browser. The next step in the evolution of the browser stack will be JWT style authentication. We're going to bring online an identity provider and IDP. We'll be using auth0, and we're going to be taking advantage of the new external JWT signing infrastructure that Andrew brought into the controller recently, and we will actually be logging in through that mechanism. So look for that in an upcoming video.